to the Hope Over Coffee podcast, a place where we believe that life is better when we know and are known by others. We're here to stir your soul, ignite your passions, and help you find the hope that you've been searching for. So grab a cup, sit back, and enjoy the conversation as we dive into topics that matter most. We're excited to share this journey with you, and we hope that you will join us for every step of the way. Welcome back to the Hope Over Coffee podcast. I am your host, Jared OJ, and we're getting back at it. I know I've been off and hadn't put anything out since early December, putting a podcast out. It's just been the holidays and then getting sick, and it's just too hard to fight all that to get something out. And we're just gonna do wherever God takes us. But I did want to say to anyone listening, to any guy listening, especially. I've been watching a lot of videos and just talking about how guys are so alone and so isolated, and they feel like they have to do everything alone, and there's no community. It's all a lie. I want you to know you're not alone. You need to find a safe community to where you can share what's going on in your life. And I hope that the Hope Over Coffee podcast is a way to kind of kickstart that for you and find somebody to go meet with or whatever. And if you can't find somebody, reach out to me. We'll try and find something together. I hate it that this world, this culture is isolating men and making them think that they're not loved and that they have to do everything alone. And I'm just kind of over it. Yeah. So I have a guest this week of Mr. Henry Iatesta. Yeah. If I said that right.
Correct, man. You got it.
I don't know anything about you other than a couple stories I heard from somebody else. I have no clue. So if you'll start off with just sharing a part of your story of whatever you want to share, we'll go where God takes us. Yeah. And we'll just see where we land. And when you get tired of talking, we'll shut off the cameras and we'll go home. Well, I'm home. Yeah. You can go home when we're done.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. First thing I want to do is thank you for doing this, man, for submitting and answering the call to God to do this, because this podcast has really helped me more than you'll ever know in certain circumstances and situations. So I want to thank you. And I've been listening and watching over, the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. You've just gotten more confident. You've gotten better. Hand talker. I'm going to hit that probably 500 times. But anyway, just keep doing what you're doing, man. Yeah. And I just want to encourage anybody who's out there. We all have stories, right? Yep. Reach out to Chad and share your story, man, because people need to hear it. Yep. And
I think stories are important, not just for the sake of hearing a story, but God can use any story to help somebody else to get through whatever they're going through.
Yeah, personal testimonies are very, very powerful. Yeah. So I want to share that first of all before we get into my story. Yep. So there's been a lot of change going on in my life lately, like a lot of change recently. Mm-hmm. I'm talking change of job, new pastor, new service times at church. It's been incredible change, right? And so in the midst of all that, I started kind of getting bitter and kind of angry for a little while, and I was mulling over things, and I was having some distrust over some of the decisions made at church. And on my way home from work one day, I was just looking for something to listen to on the way home. It takes about 30 minutes to get home, 35 minutes. Right. And so I'm like, man, I haven't listened to Hope Over Coffee in a little while. So I look it up. I'm like, well, looky there. So I missed Ross's, and I saw that John Louvier did one. So I'm just like, let me listen to John Louvier's. So dude, on the way home, I'm about a block from my house, and God just hit me, and I broke. And it was something that was said during the interview that hit me. You guys were talking about change and how change, and John Louvier is like, change, we should embrace change, because oftentimes when change is happening, God is setting us up or teaching us, well, he's getting us prepared for something better. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes we resist that. And he said, in my life, I've seen that happen. And here I was being upset, being angry, more or less, God, all this stuff is changing. Why is this happening? Mm-hmm. And I realized I started getting bitter and angry. And those were things that I used to do. And God was just like, you got to stop doing that. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you through John Louvier. And then you asked him, if there's one thing you want people to know, one thing, John, and he said, there's an enemy out there and he's real and he's attacking you because you love Jesus and Jesus loves you. Right. And it hit me. I'm like, I'm letting the enemy win. I'm like, he's a loser. And dude, I'm just crying on the way home. And I got home and I felt such relief because, and then ever since then, I'm just like, I'm going to trust the leadership of the church because they're under the authority of Christ. Mm-hmm. I'm under their authority, and I'm going to go with the flow and just trust Jesus.
So do you go to church with us, or
I go to Trinity?
Trinity,
yeah, Trinity Baptist Church. And so, I went to Sale Street for many, many years. My wife went there for like 50 something years, and then some things happened there where we had to make a transition, and so I was letting that bitterness and anger and unforgiveness that I encountered there, kind of start breeding in my new church. It's kind of weird, but are you saying that there was like a little bit of trauma at the old church, and you just carried that into your new situation? The situation there was things were changing at Sale Street, right? And there was some church hurt. I'm not going to get into all the details. I mean, there's no point in doing that. But the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions I was having, I started having those same thoughts, feelings, and emotions over the change going on at Trinity. Right. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I don't even know what's going to happen in the future. And then when Louvier said that, oftentimes when things change, God is setting you up for something better or trying. And I'm like, I'm looking at this all wrong. And I was going back, to my old ways and my old thought, the fake self, Right. And I was just like, so anyway, I broke that day. I realized the enemy was attacking me, trying to make me. And then ever since then, I'm just like, and I had like one of those, like a spiritual high after the faith walk. Mm-hmm. And I got home and I was just like, I didn't realize I was doing it until I heard that. So anyway, I'm saying all that to say God used you in your podcast to help me get over a struggle.
That's awesome.
And so it was great. I mean, and it was a really great breakthrough that day. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really the heart. The goal is, matter of fact, I've been stuck. I would say stuck. I feel like God's kind of giving me a verse to get my I think a life verse, or at least a verse for the year of 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 13. And Peter's basically saying, as long as I got breath, I'm gonna remind you and stir your soul until I'm dead. Uh-huh. Like, to summarize, I can't quote it exactly. I go with my Bible, but man, that's all I want. I just want to stir somebody into something,
right? Yeah.
And help them step one step closer to something.
Yeah. Well, that moves me and helped me to embrace all the change that's been going on in my life the past year. Mm-hmm. It's been an incredible amount of change. And I guess like most people, I'm a creature of habit. I like my, just my routine, and I don't. And so
we all are.
So anyway, but now when I start getting in that mode, I just remember God is preparing me for something better in this change, and I'm going to trust that, know that, because His Word tells me that. Right? I'm His child. He loves me. And He has what's best for me.
Right.
So anyway, I thank you for doing this, because it helped me get over something that, if I hadn't listened that day, happened to listen that day, I'd probably still be bitter, angry, and upset. And I probably would have never got in touch with you, because I got in touch with you just to tell you, man, you're doing a great job. God is using you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And well, on that note, we'll tell everybody else, hey, if you want to get on,
that's right.
You just message me.
That's right.
We'll get it set up somehow. And even if it's across the country, we'll do it over the computer. I don't care.
Absolutely.
We'll talk. Matter of fact, the episode with Ren.
Yeah.
He's in Alabama. Okay. We was literally on the phone and did that. So
yeah, that's cool.
And also on that note, man, I've been not struggling, but in the beginning when all this started, I was trying to do it my way, kind of like Brian's message. I thought I was trying to do everything the right way and doing everything my way, and I was trying to push the podcast, and I was trying to push and then I kind of backed off. But at the same time, thinking about that verse to remind people, I also have to talk to people and encourage people. Yeah. So if you're out there and you're listening to the episode and you know somebody that might want to hear it, go ahead and share it. Right. Not in the sense that, I want everybody to hear everything. It's somebody might need to hear something they don't know they need to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Although there is a little bit of a little bit of ego in there, like, oh man, it would be cool to be bigger, but at the same time, trying to keep in focus that this is about God and God just getting out what He wants to get out.
Absolutely.
And I'm just trying to be a mouthpiece.
Yeah. But the more you encourage people, the more people that come on, they share it with their friends and family. The more people are going to get involved and be like, man, stuff is good. So
you said when I did Cody Prosser, my goodness, Cody's Cody. But we were like, I released it, and that day that Sunday, we're in the lobby, and anybody walked by, hey man, just my podcast. Hey man, just my podcast. I'm like, your pod? What? Hey man, just my podcast. And like it did kind of blow up. That one was downloaded a lot. It was kind of cool, but it was just funny because Cody
he did a great job
promoting
really
hard. It was funny, but it was good.
Yeah, that was awesome. So anyway, so my story, there's many facets to it. So, I mean, starting out as a young child, I don't ever remember not believing in God or Jesus. You know, I always knew that there was a God. I never believed any otherwise. My mom and dad were believers, but they weren't taking things serious. There was a church near our house. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I grew up in the city, kind of rough area in Philadelphia. And so anyway, as a young kid, I would go to like vacation Bible schools. We'd go Christmas, Easter, and I would go when I stayed with my grandmom and grandfather. And that would be my dad's mom and dad. And so in the city, it was rough. I got introduced to things at a very young age that people shouldn't get introduced to. So I had a habit of drugs and alcohol use from a very young age. I remember going to high school, like the earliest was like 2nd and 3rd grade, and just doing it, not even knowing what I was doing. It's one of them things where the older kids kind of, all right, have him do it. Now you did it, so you can't tell on us. Don't tell your parents. And I didn't know otherwise, you know? Right. And so by the time I got older and realized what I was doing, it was too late. I was already a habitual user. And so as time moved on, though, we moved out of the city because the city was kind of getting worse and worse in the neighborhood that we were living in. So my parents decided to move to the suburbs. Well, a lot of people's parents were deciding to move to the suburbs, and the drug use
just kind of went with it.
Yeah, it was worse there than it was where we were living in the city. And so I grew up doing drugs, using drugs, drinking, and think that was just a normal everyday way of life with all the people that I hung around with and the people in the circles that I was in. And but when we moved to, it's a little town called Mount Ephraim, New Jersey. It's right outside of the city. You can actually walk to the city from where that town was. And there was, lo and behold, a Southern Baptist church right there in the middle of that town. Okay. And then my mother started bringing us to church. My dad would come. My mom was more of the driving force in all this, and she rededicated her life. And I saw a change happen in her life, and I was like, man, this is kind of cool. So from the time I was 11 to 16, we went to church. I mean, it was no brainer. You went Sunday morning, you know, Wednesday, I went all the youth activities. Right. Had a friend of mine that was going to the Methodist church, and they would have their pastor would have breakfast on like Wednesday mornings before church. So I would go to that and go to their youth things. And so I was just kind of, but I knew every time I was convicted to give my life to Christ, I'm like, as soon as I walk out of here, I'm going to go get high, you know, and most of the time I was high in church. And I remember, I mean, it's dating my age, but I went to a Tesla concert one time with the Methodist group, right? So we went to this Tesla concert. It was at a high school in a gymnasium. And, you know, they're doing the altar call, and all my friends are like, we're going down. You got to come with us. You got to give your life to Christ. I'm like, we got stoned before we walked in here. We're getting stoned when we get out of here. Right. I know, you know, and I know God's not looking for perfection, but I'm like, I just don't think that's the right thing to do if I'm not changed, you know. And then that was my thinking at the time.
And actually, I'm sitting here listening, and just there's probably people out there that if they knew that at that point in time, church people, they're like, I can't believe you're in here like this. Yeah, I can't believe you're coming in church just using drugs, and like they would flip out. And it's kind of irritating to me, because in my walk of life to where I've landed in a blended family and the things that I've done, I find it way easier now to look at anybody doing anything that's unchristlike.
Yeah, right.
Especially unbelievers. Be like, man, you just don't know. Right. Like, you don't know any better. Yeah. Let's hang out. Let's try and fix what's going on. For you to do that, to even keep going while still using the drugs, walking into church high, like that's amazing. It kind of blows my mind, but it's like, not saying it's good, but it's just kind of awesome at the same time.
Well, I kept being drawn to that. I kept being drawn to my grandparents. I knew there was something good there. There was something decent, right? But yet I was living a life that I knew was far from that, if that makes sense, right? And I knew I just needed to give my life to Christ. There was many times I was convicted and said the sinner's prayer, oftentimes. And I'm just like, well, I just kept living the life. But of course, you heard I was 8 years old, man. It was just a daily habit, routine. It's just the way we lived,
Right.
And so, and I'm not going to get into all the drug use and all the things I did or didn't do. I mean, we don't need to kind of live there.
It was there.
Yeah.
there was drug use there.
Right. And and then, a lot of my friends that didn't go to church, they knew I went to church, and, they're just like, oh yeah, but so those things got important in our lives from the time I was 11 to 16.
Okay.
And I seen more growth in my mom, my dad. I don't ever remember them reading the Bible or whatever, but at this time, I remember my mom was marking up her Bible, reading it, praying. My dad, it just didn't seem important to him. It was all about work and, trying to supply money for the family and support us and everything. And back then he more or less had 2 full-time jobs because he was working a job and then he had a woodworking shop in the basement where he built furniture to sell so he could support us, and he was old school. Mom didn't work. She stayed at home, took care of the family kind of deal. But tragedy hit when I was 16, January 2nd in 1984. My dad had a massive heart attack at work.
Oh man.
And so he didn't come home. And the harder part about that is, a lot of time I had drinking issues. I would get called. I would promise I'm not going to do it again, and this sort of stuff. And so he was off the last 2 weeks of Christmas that year. Of course, I'm off for school.
So how old were you?
I was 16.
16. Yep. If you said that earlier, I missed it.
Yeah, I was 16.
Okay, 16 in
16.
84. Okay.
Yeah, 84. And so of course, me and my friends, we have a big blowout. I come home so drunk. I'm blacked out. I don't even know what's going on, and so it was a bad scene and everything. And then, so my dad got really angry at me, and then he didn't talk to me those 2 weeks. So the last 2 weeks of my father's life, I didn't even say a word to him. Right. He would talk through my mom to me, and I knew I hurt him bad, but, I say all that to say, man, you never know the last thing you're going to do or say to somebody,
right.
And how impactful that's going to be in their lives. So he said, always be prepared and ready to weigh your words before you say them. Right. And so time goes on. I remember the day distinctly. It was during one of the time changes or whatever. I don't know if it was hour early, hour later, whatever. But we wound up going to church early because we didn't change our clocks. This is after my father passed away. And I remember my mom was just devastated. She was like in shock for, it seemed like years. Yeah. Really. And we pulled up to the church and nobody was there. And we forgot we changed the clocks. And I remember we just drove away, man. And then after that point, our family we got angry with God and didn't want to have anything to do with God. If you would do this to our family, what type of God are you? That kind of mentality. Right. And then we had several years of these things weren't good, So, and then after that, above all things, I moved down here from Philadelphia because after my father passed away, my mom's family's from here. She grew up in Westlake, and she met my dad because my dad's brother came here to work at Energy, well, it was Gulf States back then. So my dad would come visit him, and then that's how my mom and dad met. Okay. Got married. So we moved down here, culture shock. It was like going to a different planet, man. Well, okay. Seriously, it was.
On that note, so my wife is actually from Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And her previous marriage, he was up there, came back down here. Yeah, culture shock.
You're right.
She's like, what's going on with these people? Yeah. So I can relate in the sense of hearing her stories. Yeah. Of the culture shock.
I would come down to Louisiana in the summertime, spend some summertime, with my uncles and my grandfather and stuff. But living here, man, it was like, man. So anyway, when I first get here, my father died in January. One of my best friends had a motorcycle in March, motorcycle accident in March, and he wound up dying. Okay. And so I'm already bitter and angry with God. So that didn't help matters any. Then I'm moving away from all my friends where I grew up. Right. My last year of high school, I'm going to Westlake High instead of, with my friends and graduating. And so my life was turned upside down then, Right. And so a lot of drinking, a lot of drug use. And I wound up well, I actually did. My mom met another guy, and he was bad news. My mom kind of crumbled, and she started using drugs, and just it was a bad scene at my house, right? And so I'm drinking, staying away, and so one night I got into a serious car accident. It was like a month after graduation, so I graduated in '85.
Okay.
And August of '85, I wound up getting into a really serious car accident which really should have taken my life.
Mm-hmm. And
so God allowed me to survive through that. And just miraculous things happened that night in order for me to still be here.
Right.
You know, medically speaking, I should not be alive. So, and so as time goes on, I wound up, after I healed from the accident, it was about 3 years had passed by. So it was like the end of December '87. Things were not good in my home with the guy that had moved there. A lot of anger, a lot of hatred, and my mom knew it was unsafe for us. Mm-hmm. And she knew we had to get out of there. So we just kind of picked up one night in the middle of the night. My mom got me, my sister, my brother. We got in the car and we moved to Virginia. Her mom lived there, and my dad's brother lived there at the time. And so we moved to Virginia. Of course, there wasn't much work around here at the time. Mm-hmm. Kind of things were slow. And I was able to go there, get some work, get back on my feet. I thought, man, it's time for a fresh start. I can start all over again. Well, that didn't last very long. So met some guys, hanging out with them, and then the drug use and the drinking even got worse, you know. And so as time moves on, this is like in '93 now. And, you know, I'm still a believer. I'm still praying. I'm still, you know, my grandmom and my great aunt, they're twins, would send me letters in the mail, send me tracts, encourage me with scriptures. And so I'm holding on by a thread at this time, Jay. Right. Like I'm just holding on by a thread. And I tried to quit on my own, but, you know, I'd maybe stop a month, 2 months.
Right.
Friends would come around. It would be worse than ever. I was like, I would have to make up for lost time. Yeah. And then I finally got to the point to where the guilt of the way I was living and the lifestyle I was leading led me to, I was unable to function in society. Like I was crumbling on the inside, and all I thought about was death. You know, the only way out is to die. I can't stop this. There's no way that this can happen.
Right.
And so I started waking up at 3:33 in the middle of the night, like 3:33. I'd wake up, my digital alarm clock, which I still have, by the way. 3:33. And in my twisted thinking, I'm thinking, you know, bad theology, twisted thinking. I was trying to figure out ways to commit suicide and be able to ask God for forgiveness, and then everything would be okay, right? So I worked at a commercial business park, and I thought if I just go to the top of the tallest building and I jump off, I can confess my sin of suicide on the way down. Then I'm good. I'm going to heaven, you know? And so that was my thinking, my twisted thinking at the time. And then there was spiritual warfare going on. I can't even describe or explain what was going on the inside and in my mind and things that were happening.
Right.
But I woke up at 3:33 so many times, Chad, in a row, at night after night after night. I thought, oh, this is a sign. I'm supposed to go and commit suicide. So one night I decided I'm doing it. You know, I'm ready to do it. I had my clothes on, had my keys clipped. When I wake up at 3:33, I'm going to the building, I'm jumping off, and I'm ending it. It's over with. I wake up at 4:44. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, next night. So I'm all in, going to do it again. 4:44. And in these nights when I woke up, I had peace, right? It wasn't a turmoil. It wasn't go down there and do it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try again because 3:33 is the time, right? I'm supposed to do this. 4:44. After about 4 days or so, I'm like, Lord, this is not the destiny for my life, is it? This is not what you want.
Right.
And it wasn't very long after that, I was actually had a beer in my hand, and I'm looking at the phone, wanting to call the suicide hotline. And just this still small voice inside of me was just like, man, you've had enough, haven't you? And I was like, yeah, I've had enough. And then from that moment on, God just took away the desire for drugs and alcohol. I can't explain it any other way, that he just took it from me.
Dang.
Right. And I haven't used since March 28th, 1993. And so in between that, there was 3 near-death experiences that he delivered me from. And then so here I am now, right?
Dang. Man, I'm just sitting here listening to all those stories, all those things of the just that I sometimes I like to picture in my mind the events people are telling me. Like, so I literally had you pulling up in your mom's car to our church because that's just what I kind of envisioned, and like the parking lot empty.
Right. Yeah.
And just how profound that was after your dad died.
Yeah, it was.
And just the fact that it was literally a visual representation of I feel absolutely alone, and church is not helping me. Bro, so peace out. We're done.
You hit the nail on the head. And I specifically remember watching my mom's face, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing, and when we drove away, I was looking at the church, dude.
Yeah.
And I just kind of knew. And I was angry. Like I was angry with God, right? And I didn't hide that.
Yeah.
And but that led me down a path of destruction that he soon delivered me from, you know.
And even in the anger and the rejection and just the turning away.
Yeah.
To hear that there's this thread of just attached to you, just this, like this little single thread of keeping God just there, not really prominent, but it's just there.
Well, he kept proving himself to be real to me, man.
Right.
So in between all this, a cousin of mine was flying into Dulles International Airport, which I live like 15 minutes away. Mm-hmm. So he was coming for a layover and, you know, just got a hold of me. Man, you want to go get some dinner? Yeah, sure. Hadn't seen him in a long time.
Right.
So we go eat. And after we're done eating, I get home, walking down to my room, and there's a track, dude. He left a track by the empty beer bottles, beer cans, on a coffee table thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And I picked it up and read it and just broke. I'm like, God, you're here. You're real. He just kept on reaching out to me, man,
right.
You know? And I got something better for you, you know?
Yeah.
And I knew that.
Yeah.
And that's why like the guilt overwhelmed me so much. And I didn't know how to change it. Was this ever going to change? That's why I got to the point, you know, death is the only way out. You know?
Right.
Which that was the enemy trying to, you know, convince me of that.
I mean, like you're talking about earlier with John's episode, the enemy literally wants to steal, kill, and destroy.
That's right.
Anything and everything that is anything good.
But I've learned more and more over the years, he doesn't have authority. Right.
Right.
I don't have to fear. He doesn't have the authority.
Yeah. So. No, and man, I'm still just kind of like,
go ahead.
I'm rolling through your whole story.
No, I gave you a lot, right?
Yeah.
I didn't give a lot of details, but I mean, we went over a lot, right?
The goodness of God to keep putting those little things in place to really not let you completely turn away.
Right.
And the fact that he's literally right behind you,
right?
He's literally just waiting for you to turn around.
That's right.
Through the whole thing.
You're right about it. And that night, whenever that happened, I didn't know what was happening. Mm-hmm. I just felt something in me say, "You've had enough, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm done." You know? I don't know what to do. And from that moment on, man, I never had a temptation to use drugs or drink ever again. Man, and so I'm so blessed because I know a lot of people that struggle with that, man.
Yeah.
And they're tempted all the time. But I'm so fortunate that God just took that away from me.
Yeah.
And at the time I didn't realize how special and what a great gift that was. But man, that's a tremendous gift.
Right.
And so yeah, and other things that took place in my life, like my grandfather passed away. Mm-hmm. And at his funeral, there was a guy named Jim Luminati that was one of his best friends. Mm-hmm. And I would visit my grandmom and my grandfather. I'd go over there, you know, to eat and stuff like that. They'd invite me over for dinner. And so Jim and my pop, I'd see them over there whispering to each other, you know, while we're having dinner after dinner. And then when the ladies went in the kitchen to clean up, they'd start the gospel presentation, you know. And I know they were setting me, you know, like, okay, what are we going to say? How are we going to start this, you know? And it finally got to the point where I'm like, man, I'm getting tired of going over there and hearing this, because it's making me feel more guilt than it is helping at the time, you know. And but I'm like, man, grandmom's home cooked meals, or, you know, I'll go listen to it again. So I'm telling y'all that at his funeral, Jim preached his funeral, man. And that day I got so crushed and so convicted that I had to walk out of there because I couldn't control myself. I was crying uncontrollably
Mm-hmm.
because I knew I was running from God, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew that He loved me and wanted a relationship with me.
Right.
And yet, but time went on. I was an addict. I didn't know how to quit. I didn't know how to stop, And so those things happened in 93. And I got to the point, my mom at this time, thank the Lord, she got sober, she got clean, she met another guy, got married, and things were pretty decent in her life. So of course I reached out to her, and she's like, Henry, you can come live with me until, you get things straight. And so I came back to Louisiana in 93. And so I've been here ever since. And in that time period, from about 93 to 97, I was visiting churches. I would go to church with my uncle who lived in Ragley.
Mm-hmm.
And he has like 40 acres of land. So he would invite me over to help him. He's a recovered alcoholic, so he knew what it was like. He tried to keep me busy, help him build fences and do things on his land, things like that. And so we went to church together from time to time. And I was trying different churches, but nothing was really working. But my great aunt Ann, my grandmom's twin sister,
Mm-hmm.
she would write me letters, and we'd write back and forth. And I poured my heart out to her for about 9 months, and she poured back, read this scripture, here's a devotion book. This is what the Lord says about that. Because her husband was an alcoholic, so she knew what, and she just had the right words to say and the thing, and that helped me. So that was more or less my rehab. I locked myself in a room at my mom's house for about 9 months, corresponding with my great aunt, right? And God just speaking to me,
And so you said that was around 90.
That was between 93 and 97. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which, I'm sorry. I'm a nerd. I'm an IT nerd. And 96, I graduated high school in 96.
Okay.
Played with computers back then.
Right.
Wasn't as smart as other people, but I played with them. So I'm tickled, but at the same time, it's really cool that you actually sent letters back and forth.
Yeah.
Like old school letters.
Yeah.
Actual writing stuff down and mailing it in the mail.
Right. Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
That's some of the threads that held me together, because my grandma would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Always keep on keeping on for our Lord Jesus. Always a scripture. Always telling me about how much God loves me. We did that back and forth for years, birthday cards and I'd always write back to them because, they took the time to write to me. I would do that.
Because that's a lost art.
Yeah.
of writing someone a letter and mailing a handwritten letter somewhere.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We just don't do that. I mean, it's email and text and short little OK and Ks and everything's so shortened now.
Yeah.
I just think that's really cool.
Yeah.
To actually have letters written back and forth.
Yeah. It was an awesome time in my life. It really was. I mean, it was a dark time, hard time, rough time. But when I look back, just the way that God used that time to help me come out of a hole, really, and to start over. And so what's next for you? What came after 97? Well, so in 97, I prayed to be celibate, right?
Uh-huh.
I was dating that uncle that I told you about, Uncle D. That's my mom's brother. Actually, I'm named after him. His name's Henry D. So when he was landing from Vietnam, he landed from Vietnam the day I was born.
Okay.
So they named me after him. Huh. And so he knew I was struggling. I was dating. Things weren't going well, and different things. And he's like, son, write down the attributes and character traits you want in a wife, and I'll write down what I think, and then we'll get together and we'll pray about this. And so we prayed about that for about 3 years. And I would date some girls, things wouldn't work out, or they'd want to go a little further. And I'm like, I've already talked about this. I'm not going there anymore.
Right.
And so lo and behold, I meet my wife, Pam.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost instantly knew that she was the one. I mean, it was just like, okay. And now I resisted that for a while, Chad, like we do sometimes. And God was finally like, you prayed for her. This is her. What are you doing? I'm like, I've only known her a week, and I'm imagining her walking down the aisle. I'm like, I don't even know her.
Yeah.
No, you don't need to know her. I placed her in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So we met April 1st, 97, jokes on her.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually wound up getting married January 16th, 98. I mean, that's kind of how, and the first year we were married, on New Year's Eve, I asked her, I said, well, honey, what did you do last year on New Year's Eve? She kind of went, she said, oh, I was praying for you. I'm like, well, what do you mean? She goes, I forgot about it. I was sitting here feeling sorry for myself because I didn't have a date on New Year's Eve.
Right.
And I said, God, and she had something where a guy asked her to get married and then broke the engagement off. Okay. And so she was like, and she's older at the time. And so she's like, God, give me the peace that I had about being single before somebody placed marriage, because I was okay being single and I would be single the rest of my life if that's what your will was. And she said, but if you have somebody for me, then send them to me. And she said, then I jokingly said, and make sure that he's like tall, over 6 foot and has dark hair. I'm like, so hence here I am. Right. And so we meet, get married, and, my life started to change a lot. I started to go to church with her and I really got plugged in, got involved. But for a while there, I was getting confused. I was thinking I got to do good to make up for the bad things that I did. Right. Trying to figure all this out, you know, and reading the Bible a lot. They had a really great pastor, Brother Eddie Simmons, who Holy Spirit spoke to me through him so much, so often, and convicted many, many times and just learned, and I was growing, still not understanding that grace and that relationship with the Lord Jesus.
Right.
And so it was in April of 2001. We had Experiencing God weekend at our church. I don't remember Henry Blackaby.
Yeah.
They did it. And so it's like a revival weekend and you go through the whole thing. And at the end of it, they leave an option for anybody who wants to share testimony. We're going to have a time to do that. Right. And so we're going through all this whole process and everything. And I'm at home a lot of times in between because it was a pretty rigid schedule through the weekend. We were doing different things, the whole church kind of involved. And I'd be looking in the mirror, Chad, and I would just start literally shaking and crying. And my wife is like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, God wants me to share at the end of this Experiencing God weekend. And I'm not doing it. She's like, yeah, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I've been going to church with them for like 3 years.
Yeah.
No one knows this stuff about me. I don't want to reveal this. I'm afraid of rejection. I finally got a place where I feel safe, comfortable, at home, people I can trust.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to ruin that.
It goes back to that. I think the biggest lie that I feel like all men deal with this is if you really knew me, you're not going to love me because you don't know the things that I've done. You
welcomed me in this church. I mean, as soon as I walked in that church, I've been praying for a church home as well. Right. I knew it was home. I'm like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I just knew that, And so I'm like, I'm not telling these people that. And so when my wife and I first got married, we'd go visit my grandma, some of my old friends and stuff that I grew up with, childhood friends and stuff. And of course, they start telling all the stories. And so one day we got back in the car and my wife looked at me. She goes, I'm so glad I don't know that guy. I'm like, what are you talking about? That guy they talk about, that's not you, And so I'm just like, wow. that was huge for me because sometimes you don't feel like you're growing or changing.
Right.
She goes, I never married that guy. I'm so glad that you're changed, And so that just meant, man, that meant the world to me, And so through all that, at the end of this Experiencing God weekend, I'm sitting in the pew at one point, dude, and I'm just crying like a baby and everyone's looking at me like I'm nuts. But I was looking up at the baptistry and the cross over the baptistry and it hit me. It's like, you don't have to do anything except just receive and accept what Christ did for you already.
Right.
That's all you got to do and just trust him. Right. And I'm just like, wow, I missed it all those years. Right. Believe and have faith. You got fire insurance, confess your sin, you're going to heaven.
Right.
I'm like, it's so much more than that, right? It's the sacrifice of the Son of God who died and took the wrath for my sin. I don't have to do anything except for receive what he already did. The payment I can't make, he made.
Right. And
dude, it was a game changer, right? And so those were some really cool times in my life because it was like the Holy Spirit was just filling me. The Bible, I was inhaling it. I couldn't get enough. I couldn't stop reading it. Morning, I'd come home at lunch. I had a job where I was able to come home for lunch, get home. And after that season of my life, my wife told me, she said, I enjoyed you reading the Bible, but at some point I was like, I wanted my husband back. Right. and it was just an enjoyable, just a time of refreshing and God filling me up and me just really starting to understand scripture and what it meant to be a believer and follower of Christ.
Right.
And so at the end of that weekend, Chet, I don't remember how I got on stage. I just remember finding myself up there behind the pulpit.
Okay.
and I'm shaking, about to pass out because I'm gripping the pulpit like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not sharing.
Yeah.
And I kind of started getting woozy. My father-in-law was walking up behind me because he thought I was going to pass out. Like, that's how bad it was.
Yeah.
But then once it flowed, man, I just dumped it in front of the whole church.
Mm-hmm.
And then I received such love, dude. Like, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, just people coming up to me, like a good friend of mine saying, you know, when I go out with my college friends and we have reunions and we have dinners and stuff, I'll drink a couple beers just to fit in with them like old times. He goes, I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm telling them why. Because I'm a believer and follower of Christ, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a mother come up to me. Man, my son has been addicted for years. And I've lost hope. I'm not losing hope anymore. You know, just, you know, those things.
Right.
I got a letter from a student in the youth group just telling me how much that meant to her. And that she was going down a path that was, she knew was the wrong direction. It was going to be destructive, and how she turned her life around. You know, and I see her now with all her kids and her husband, you know, and it's just like, that's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And then to bring all this, dial this all in to now, I gave a talk at Faith Walk 45, right? So that's why I got my deal here. You know, faith discerns.
Right.
And Ross gave a talk at that same walk. Sarah's in the youth group at the time that I shared testimony. So I think she's probably 11th or 12th grade. I think it probably was 11th grade at the time. I'm not positive on that. But so I got up there and I shared that testimony. I poured my heart out. And then not long after that, I got involved with the youth group. I was volunteering and things. And I got really plugged in and involved with youth for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was at Faith Walk, so I can't say too much, but when Ross, Sarah, and I saw each other, Sarah goes, Ross, that's the guy I was telling you about when you were struggling with what you were going through. She said, Henry, your testimony has impacted me all these years because you're the first person I ever saw get up in front of a church and be real. You know?
Yeah.
And God, like, that's 21 years later.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm just like, the power of a personal testimony and a story, man, to have that impact on her. And sometimes you go through life thinking, I'm not making a difference or an impact. Yeah. And then God speaks to you through a young girl.
You're giving me goosebumps.
Yeah. No, like, it's awesome though.
And, yeah, no, that's great.
And I still think of her as a little girl, you know, and like, God, I didn't realize I impacted her like that. And he's just like, quit feeling sorry for yourself. And you are making an impact and a difference, and you're being used by me. You don't always get it right. You don't always surrender to what I'm asking you to do, but the times that you do, they're fruitful. They're beneficial because you're doing it out of a love for me, not yourself. Right. And when you get it wrong, it's okay. Just keep on moving on and try again. Don't look in the rear view. You know, we're looking in the windshield.
You got to get up and just keep going.
And so I like to tell that, you know, I'm telling that now. I don't tell too many people that. Just God is using you, man. Yeah. Just relax and let him do it. And something that happened recently along those lines, there was a friend of mine that was, actually I was teaching Sunday school with him, 9th and 10th grade boys. And I didn't know that he was going through some of these issues he was going through, but he was having some problems drinking and stuff. And like, he was in a bad way. So he calls me up and he's begging me to come over his house. And I can tell he's just drunk. He's having problems. And this is more than once I've gone over. And so I get over there. He's got a rope in the chair in the shed, and he's ready to jump off that chair. Right. And Chad, I looked at my phone to see what time he called me. It was 4:44. Right. And so I share my story about the time when I was at wit's end and I was jumping off the ledge like he was about to. Right. And when I told him that and I showed him that, he broke. And it changed him and it helped him. Right. And so I look back and I'm like, God, I went through that. And it was a terrible time in my life. I'd go through it 1,000 times because that guy, I saw him a few years later. I don't see him that often. He's working at the rehab where he went. And helping people get sober because they helped him get sober. Right. And I saw him because I forgot about all this till just recently. And I saw him around Christmas at Market Basket. I was there picking up some stuff and he was in the truck and I'm like, hey man. And his first marriage dissolved because of the issues he was having. It just didn't work out. So he's in the truck with his new wife and he rolls his back window down. He goes, look at my granddaughter. And I'm like, he's there with his new wife, granddaughter. She looks just like her mother. I remember she looked just like her mother when her mother was just a little baby. And God was just like, because I was having that time again where I'm feeling sorry for myself. Am I doing enough? Am I making an impact and a difference? And the Lord was just like, look at your friend, man. If you hadn't responded that day, he might not be here, right? If you hadn't gone through what you went through, and it's by design, he called you at 444 so you can tell him your story. It's amazing how God works, and he weaves through this stuff. And we just look at it as coincidence, but my saying is it's not odd. That's God. I mean, it's not odd at all.
So because through your whole story of from being a little kid, just kind of knowing there's something bigger and God's out there, and then with your parents, and then your dad, losing your dad, and then still that little thread of God still kind of poking like, hey, I'm still here.
Right.
Don't forget, I'm still here.
Right.
The whole time, listening to the whole thing, I'm sitting here thinking like, man, he did that for a reason.
Yeah.
You're alive because you're going to impact somebody.
That's right.
And just to hear those after stories of,
there's many more of those, man. I could tell you 1,000.
Yeah. But in those moments, you don't, I mean, people came up to you afterwards like, man, thank you for being vulnerable and telling us. But when you're doing it, you don't think about that. It's man, I'm scared to death.
Right.
That I'm exposing those deep, dark things that no one really supposed to know about.
Yeah.
But I'm just sitting here thinking about the trickle effect by what you did of being vulnerable that impacted somebody, that impacts somebody,
right?
Impacts somebody.
Yeah.
It's just rippling out all through history,
right?
Until he comes back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, that's.
And God,
like I said, you're just giving me chills earlier. I still got some.
The Lord is good, man, and He's been showing me more and more that it's not the day to day; it's those times when you surrender, and you do those things for me, kind of like what you're doing right here, and how that podcast impacted me, and a bitter heart that was starting to take place, and broke some stony, rocky things off my heart to make a difference. So now I can go to church and be like, I'm here to worship God. I'm not worshiping a pastor, a service time, or worship style. I'm here to worship God, right? Yeah. The God who created me and loves me. And so I realized the day to day doesn't define you. It's those times when God calls you to something greater because he wants to do it in and through you. Yeah. The things you can't do on your own or yourself.
Right.
And
going to before we were on camera and talking, I was sharing the fact that when I started the website and I didn't do what God told me to do.
Right.
I was doing what I thought was going to get by, and I'm listening to you, God. I'm going out there. I'm putting out these things that are godly and they're public, and it's on the internet. Anybody can see it. Yeah. And I've literally felt kind of like Brian was saying Sunday, when God told him something, it was like, I really felt like God was like, hey, that's not what I told you to do. Like that tone of voice. And I was like, oh man, that's, okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what you told me to do. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I keep getting little pieces of equipment, trying to make it better. But ultimately, man, I do love hearing stories that it did impact you in a way.
Right.
And does it make me feel good? Absolutely. But it's more of God did something.
It's what a God
through me to help you. Yeah. That's going to help. Yeah. You came on here. Now we're going to help somebody else.
If you hadn't surrendered and been used as his vessel to start doing this, I would have never heard John, right? Right. I would have never got encouraged to encourage you and text you, and then now here I am, lo and behold, right? Yeah. And the Lord is going to use this. I was going to say, hopefully, no, I know that he is and he will, because that's what he does. Yeah. That's who he is. And so it's a beautiful thing. And I was thinking about like the impact. Are you going to be doing anything with the Impact Weekend next weekend with your church? Be involved in any way?
Well, I found out yesterday from my wife Angie. We're going to be there. We're small role. We're just going to be out in the lobby or something, like corralling kids or something. I don't even
that's good,
know.
Man.
I just know next weekend I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah.
We're going to drive together, and she's going to tell me, hey, you need to go stand over there, and be like, all right.
Yeah. Well, you're there.
I'm there.
Involved.
I'm there to help do something. I don't even know what.
Yeah. But my nephew DeMarcus, we were talking about earlier, he basically grew up with me. You know, I helped raise him and everything. And well, through the Faith Walk ministry, I invited him, and there were some major breakthroughs in his life and one of his cousins' lives. You know, I don't want to go into many details. Hopefully he'll come on here one day and share that. But so the impact that community has had on him, that Fight Club community, that Faith Walk community, and how he was able to open up and get real by people sharing their stories.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cody, Tyler, DeMarcus, right?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to watch and see.
Yeah.
But Impact Weekend, a good friend of mine, a spiritual friend of mine that I've walked with for many, many years, his son is Sam Stanfield. Sam, I had the privilege to baptize him in the pond at their house.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm going into all this. And the thing is, through the prayers, through the times, through their struggles, through me just being there for them, you know, just being myself, trying to encourage them. So Sam and DeMarcus are going to be leading a group.
Oh, nice.
Right, at Impact next week. You know, all these years later, how God has turned things around in their lives. And Sam went to Faith Walk. Sam, I think the turning point in Sam's life was Be Still. They had the Be Still weekend at your church. It was last year. Yeah, and
so they just had another one.
Yeah.
They Kristen, Paul, and Joey went.
Okay, good. All right.
3 of them went up there for that.
DeMarcus' little brother Larry lives with me. He wound up going.
Oh, nice.
And so anyway, I said all that just to say, man, we make an impact and a difference in people's lives. And sometimes we don't realize how much of an impact and a difference we make. And it's probably good that we don't realize that, because our heads would get huge, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but the Lord has a way of, like, you know, his dad the other day, he was so excited. DeMarcus and Sam are going to be leading a group together. You know, and man, how awesome is this? God is so good. I'm like, I know, man, it is great, John. And just to see them grow. And then now God puts them together like he put us together. You know, It's like, come on, man, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you really can't. And so, and then my boy, Larry, I call him my boy, but that's my sister's son. Both of them are my sister's sons. And I was actually helping him this morning fill out an application because he wants to go on a mission trip to New Delhi, India this summer for 7 weeks.
That's cool.
Yeah, the kids sold out for just telling people about Jesus, and it's incredible. And so, but I'll tell you a little story about Larry. And this all goes back to Faith Walk and tied into Faith Walk. I was having a spiritually dry spell in my life for a while with the issues with the church and everything like that. Then we had the hurricane and the freeze and the pandemic, all that stuff. So it's pretty much watching church on TV, eating breakfast, you know. And I've been trying to, Larry had been asking to come live with me for a while, and I've been trying to convince my sister that would be the best thing for him. And she just wouldn't budge, wouldn't give in. And so through just time and prayer, my wife was wanting to fight and go to court. I said, you can't go that route. You know, I mean, I want to too, but we just got to leave this in God's hands and let him work it out. And so patience and time. But anyway, after the hurricane, they got evacuated to Baton Rouge. My sister said, come get Larry. I think he'd be better off and safer living with you. And so I'm like, whoo, praise you, Lord. So Larry comes, and Larry's from a dark place. He's got a lot of things going on in his life. And so through it all, Larry becomes a believer. He accepts Christ. But yeah, going back just a little bit, I was sitting there looking at Larry while we're watching church on TV, and God was like, I placed him in your care. He's your responsibility. You need to get that boy in church. And I was like, because I was making all these excuses. We'll visit churches. We'll go here. Well, I'm watching James Merritt on the weekends, man. I'm getting filled. I'm good. And but through that church hurt, I was drawing myself back from people. I was kind of putting up walls, pushing people away, and all that stayed at home watching churches made it easier. You know?
Yeah.
But I knew it was wrong, and so we got plugged in at Trinity. We were going to go visit, but God just laid on our hearts, this is where you need to be. And then lo and behold, Larry gets plugged into the youth group. He winds up getting saved, gets baptized. Larry's still having issues. He's going from dark to light, confused, you know? And so one night, Taylor McDonald and his wife, Jessie, Taylor was one of my dorm mates at Faith Walk. We went, and we were gold dorm, and Blake was in that dorm as well. And so me and Taylor got really tight after that. We had a lot of long talks, late nights. I mean, you've been to Faith Walk. And so we're spiritual brothers. And so for a while there, we were trying to get together, go to dinner. So one week I'm just like, you know what? We're going Saturday night. I don't care. You and Jesse come over. Me, you, Pam, and Jesse, we're going out to eat. So we go out to eat, get home, and Larry wasn't home yet, which is, it's kind of unusual for him not to let me know where he is or what he's doing or, so I text him to find out. Well, his car winds up breaking down. And I've had some suspicions about Larry and what was going on, but I didn't want to be too accusatory because I didn't want to push him away. Right. And, my wife was all like, I'm like, just give him enough rope. He'll hang himself eventually, And lo and behold, his car breaks down in a part of town he shouldn't have been in with a guy that I've been warning him against not to hang out with. Right. And I get over there and it just so happens Taylor's with me, right? We're going to make it happen. We're going to go to dinner, another coincidence, right? And so Pam and Jesse stay home. Me and Taylor go over there to give assistance. And I get in the car to start it. And I smelled the weed. I'm like, dude, you've been smoking reefer in my car. No, I'm like, look, don't insult my intelligence. I know you have been. I've been suspicious of it for a while. There's finally proof. I don't, Right. So here it is. So I'm over there trying to get the record, and Taylor could visibly see I'm just angry and furious. And I'm more upset because my wife, we invite you into our house. We're clothing you. We're feeding you. Mm-hmm. We give you a car to drive. And this is the thanks we get. I'm thinking all that stuff. Right. And, how's my wife going to react? This is going to hurt her. And, and it's just going on and on and on. And as I'm sitting there and I'm fuming, Taylor just leans over and he says, anger doesn't accomplish anything. And he just walked away. And I'm like, that was the Holy Spirit speaking to me through him. It's like, and God's like, yeah. You're right. You did all those things, but look at all that done for you. Look at what Jesus has done for you. Mm-hmm. And I forgive you over and over and over again. I'm just like, you're right. And so I'm like, and who am I? Right. Mr. Pot Smoker himself, well, a long time ago. Long time ago. And then, so anyway, I walked over there, I hugged him. I said, I love you. And we're going to get through this. And he just broke in my arms like a baby. Like I was actually having to hold him up. And that was the breakthrough moment for him. And I look back and I'm like, I did things Jesus' way. God placed people in my life in order to whisper. The Holy Spirit whispered to me through Taylor. Mm-hmm. And I followed through with it. I didn't get angry and mad. Right. And now this kid is so on fire for the Lord. He's going halfway across the world to tell people about Jesus. And he had opportunity to share testimony at like 4 different FCA events. He's not even an athlete, right? Yeah. And so he goes Fields of Faith. He shared at McNeese FCA. He shared at the big event for all the FCAs in the local area at our church where they had it. And he's just been on fire for telling people about Christ since.
That's awesome.
And he tells me, he goes, that was the moment. He said, I didn't know how to receive or accept that love because it was foreign to me because he was treated so bad his whole life, man. And then he's just like, that was the moment when I realized, just how much I'm loved, right? How much I'm cared for and cared about. And I think if I'd have done it Henry's way, the world's way, I'd have got angry, throwing stuff on the curb. You're out of here, man. Yeah. Who knows where the kid would be, right? Right. And so they're not bragging on me because you clearly heard I did not want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so that was all the Lord. That was all inspired by God. That was the Holy Spirit moving in my life and through other people in my life for that moment to take place.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that this morning. I was there helping him with the application to go halfway around the world, tell people about Christ, man. Indeed. And now he's just sold out for Jesus. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And I'm just watching him grow in his faith. And I'm like, that's all the Lord, Yeah. And it's again, I'm not here by accident, right? God kept me alive for these moments,
right? Yeah. Because again, going back to that whole ripple, like what paths are going to cross just because of that? Because he's going to India. Like what are the things that are what legacy is going to come out of that? And not for our own benefit, but like advancing the kingdom.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's some good stuff.
Yeah. So God has been good to me, Chad. I mean, he really has. And there's days, when I wake up, I don't feel like getting out of bed. I think we all face that. But I have to remind myself, I'm a child of God. I'm an heir to the throne. I'm a co-heir with Christ. we're going to get through this day. Tomorrow's a new day, right? His mercies are new every morning. I mean, we all know that. We all go, I'm trying to tell you that because I'm not a perfect guy, you know?
Oh yeah.
And so, and Faith Walk and Fight Club those ministries have really, really helped me at a time. I didn't realize I needed Faith Walk so much when the time came, and like, I just didn't realize it. My sister-in-law had been inviting me for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to go to this Faith Walk. She went, and I saw a change in her, man. I was just like, wow.
I think I used to make the joke that because I went to Faith Walk number 1.
Oh, did you?
Down here, it was number 1.
Cool.
And I said, I'm the only guy that actually wanted to go.
All right.
Every other guy's like, man, I didn't want to go that, but it was amazing. Yeah. I'm like, I wanted to go. Because
Faith Walk won, man.
They had a team of guys that went up to Memphis, and did it over there so they could bring it down here. Mm-hmm. And it was just something about the way they came back, which they were rock solid guys anyway. Yeah. I mean, Raymond Cooley and all those guys, they're already. I hold them high in regard, and they came out and it's just like, man, there's something different. I need that different. I gotta go see what this is. Yeah. I feel like I was the only guy that wanted to go and do it.
Yeah. That's cool. But see, at that time, I went to Faith Walk 45. Yeah. And that was the first walk. But my sister-in-law had been inviting me. Mm-hmm. And then a guy at work named Wesley Hughes, and I know he doesn't mind me talking about it. Mm-hmm. But Wesley was the guy that came into my life. And God just really laid him on my heart. You need to witness to that guy. You need to be an example to that guy. You need to pray for that guy. And so I did that for quite a while. But Wesley's lifestyle at the time, I'm like, so I finally got to the point, I'm like, God, I'm not reaching this guy, man. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I? He's just like, I never gave up on you, man. Don't give up on him. Of course, it's not an audible voice. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then, so anyway, I get a call one day at work from Wesley. He's all excited. Somebody that he knows went to Faith Walk. He goes, man, you ever heard of this Faith Walk thing? I said, yeah, my sister-in-law's been trying to get me to go for like 3 years. I keep blowing her off. He goes, well, his friend that came back, he's like, man, he has changed. There's something different. He goes, I need what he has. And kind of like what you said. Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, yeah. He said, if I go, will you go? I'm like, definitely. Let's do this, man. So we got together, signed up and everything. Right. And then the whole time, I'm patting myself on the back. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get Wesley to Faith Walk and he's going to get changed. And I get there, I'm like, I need a Faith Walk way more than Wesley did. Yeah. And it was an exciting time in my life. And our pastor was praying one time, man, just how amazing how God is, right? And how big he is, but how small he gets sometimes. Mm-hmm. Our pastor one week, in between all this, he said, if there's any hardness on your heart towards Jesus or towards other people, just ask God to take a hammer and just break that stone off of your heart. Just take a hammer and just keep beating that. And I'm like, ooh, that's a good thing to pray for Wesley as we get ready for the walk, right? And then after
that usually goes though, we were like, oh man, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you so much. Uh-huh. And then it's like, that was a mirror for me.
Well, bro, we get to the walk. Mark Assel is the lay leader. Mm-hmm. We get to the walk. The scripture is Ezekiel 36:26. Mm-hmm. How's it go? I will give you a heart. Yeah, I will remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. Right. Right. I will put my spirit into you. I'm like, you can't make this up. I'm praying. Right. And I started praying that for myself as too, right. And we get there. I'm like, and I told Wesley that story and I showed him the scripture reference. He's like, no way, man. I'm like, yeah. It's talking about hard heart and breaking your heart and restored heart. Right. And I'm praying that God would take a hammer to our hearts, man.
I didn't remember that was Mark's, that he was leading that one. Yeah. But I do remember Blake being on it because
Blake Gilbert was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually sent I sent something and it had, I got your name on it. Okay. Now that I think about it.
All right, cool.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. So that was really a cool experience. And now Wesley, we worked together on the new job. Mm-hmm. He came out there and so but man, that weekend God just revealed some things to me, man, that I was holding on to some bitterness, some anger, mm-hmm. some unforgiveness for myself and for some other people. And he just set the record straight that weekend. And it really got a hold of me and things changed. And so I wound up encountering Holy Spirit in that new and wondrous way, that people prayed that would happen and it took place. And man, I came back from there just changed and different. Like I woke up the next morning and I'm just like, this is what freedom feels like. I didn't realize I was bound so bad because I'm still going through the motions, Chad. I'm still, you know, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I'm reading the Bible. I'm praying, you know, and some days I was just like, is this all there is? And God was just like, hold on, man, I got more for you. And I'm like, oh, it came in Faith Walk, you know? And then I was very blessed and fortunate the next walk to give a talk. And then I served on every one since, and I'm going to serve on the one in March. So nice. It's been awesome, man.
I hadn't served in a little while.
Yeah.
But I've been busy. I mean, been doing other things, which listening to all that and knowing those communities of Faith Walk. And I know Fight Club and all those. And just hearing your story and how you're still reaching out and you're still impacting those around you.
Right.
I just want to reiterate that to people that listen and watch.
Yeah.
That, like I started off with for the whole episode, man, finding a community is key.
It's very important.
So totally believe everything can preach. It can be the most secular thing in the world. Is it really secular? God created everything.
Yeah.
I think everything can preach.
Mm-hmm.
So we watched the show. Me and my wife, I'm gonna rat on this here a little bit. We watched the show Sister Wives. You ever seen this? It's a polygamous group. Yeah, okay.
I heard of it. Yeah.
Well, in it right now, their world's literally crumbling apart.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here thinking, you know why that's falling apart? They don't have community. They left what they believed and moved somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
And since they don't have that community around them, it's just kind of all crumbling.
Right.
So, and I use that just to say everything preaches and trying to get people to understand, man, if you don't have that support group, if you're isolated, if you're feeling like you can't tell anybody anything,
right?
If you feel like that you're all alone in this whole man mentality of I can handle it, I can do it on my own, I can take care of this, I can fix everything, it's all lies.
It is.
It's all lies.
That's where I was, man. I was just like, me, my wife, and my Bible, that's all I need. I don't need anybody else, man. You know, I'm just going to get hurt again or, you know, just, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so untrue, man.
Yeah.
You know, it just bound myself, you know, more or less.
We guys, find a community.
Right.
Again, especially if you live around here.
Yeah.
If you live anywhere in Southwest Louisiana, we can help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no reason you can't find a community to be with.
Yeah, and that's why that's why I went to Fight Club, those 2 challenges. Mm-hmm. You guys are so blessed and fortunate to have that a part of your community in your church in Moss Bluff. People are desperate for that, and they don't even know it, right? To get real, to be transparent, to take the mask off, and to get some healing. You know, that's what happened to me at the walk. I finally was able to talk about things that I held in for so many years, didn't realize that it was affecting my relationship with the Lord so much, right? And then that affected my relationship with other people. But once I got that out and got that right, and now me and Taylor, we talk all the time, and we just get completely honest with one another.
Right.
And it's so helpful. Sometimes when you voice it out, you're like, why was I letting that bother me so much? And you're just like, but it just helps to hear it and to bounce it off somebody else and to have them pray for you and realize they love and care about you, and you're not alone in all that.
And even just verbalizing, people don't, especially men, because we're not good communicators. We go do things, we fix things, right? But even just verbalizing it to someone else, hearing it come out of your mouth is amazing,
right? And
healing, and because we lie to ourselves. We our hearts are wicked, and we will concoct everything in our head to keep us where we're comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
In the drugs, in the addictions of pornography and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Man, so it's community. I can't say it enough. I'll never not say it enough. It's community. Right. You need the community.
And that's why I've gone, and I just keep praying that God will open the door for something like that to happen at our church.
Right.
You know, and I've talked to the leadership at the church. So it's a matter of prayer for everybody listening. You know, that maybe, you know, one day have a Fight Club South, you know, how beautiful would that be? And so, but I'm tossed now between, I need to be plugged in supporting my church, the church that God called me to be a part of, but I also miss that community, that realness.
Yeah.
You know, I got community there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got small group, we got little Bibles, but it's not real and making the impact and the change that I see in the lives of the guys that are really opening up and getting real with one another, you know?
And so I'm gonna add a caveat to my community.
Yeah, right.
There's got to be the safe community
Exactly.
that you can be vulnerable enough
Mm-hmm.
to really talk about, because especially if it's got to be a group of guys.
Yeah.
Are there situations where it can be co-ed and you can talk about stuff? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think men need a group of men to where they can absolutely say the deepest, darkest sin that they have. And
it's got
the guy
safe.
looks at him and says, I still love you.
Right. And it's got to be safe. See, that goes back to some of the church hurt I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to mention some of this, but there was a guy in a group like that when I was going to Sale Street who was pretty much telling other people what was going on in group.
Right.
And then when that got out, man, we got hurt, right?
Yeah, that's
we got upset.
Person.
And then now I'm like, and now I'm viewing the church. I'm getting angry with God. I'm getting like, okay, I thought this was supposed to be confidential.
Yeah.
Now, who can I open up? So I got to the point I'm not opening up to anybody anymore because they're going to spill their guts.
Right.
Well, after Faith Walk, the Lord was just like, not everyone's going to be like that.
Yeah.
You got to open up and tell. And if somebody is like that, that's on them, not you, Henry.
Yeah.
You need the healing and you need the relief. Let them do their thing. Right? You know?
So to go along with that, when Fight Club first started, it was really geared toward sexual sin.
Yeah, right.
Like that was dealing with pornography. I mean, it's such a widespread
it's
problem.
an epidemic, man.
For men.
Right.
Well, and women too. But again, wouldn't tell anybody's business that's in there. It was all super confidential and all that stuff. But I also looked at it from my perspective was, I don't care. I'm in Fight Club. I got a sex problem. I got pornography addiction. I'm going to tell you, like, and I'm finding freedom now. Yeah. So if we don't talk about it, then the next guy's not going to find the courage and the vulnerability enough to go tell the next person.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think we have to find the balance of vulnerability in the community and sharing stuff from groups. Right. Not, again, like you said, not to go tell everybody's business and what's going on, but encourage them. Hey, you should probably go tell somebody else what's really going on because they might need to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want to sensationalize these things.
No.
But get them out there, and say, look, there's hope for you.
Yeah.
Because we've been through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're dealing with it and struggling with it, you know. And so I got some guys that'll call me after the fact. I'm like, dude, you need to call me before, right? If you're about to take a drink and you know you're going to go down that long and winding road again, don't call me when you're falling down on the floor drunk. I got to come over there and pick you up. You call me before, right?
We have a problem of reaching out before.
Yeah. Do it before, because if you do it after, you wanted to do it in the first place, right?
Yeah. We love our sin and we want to do it.
And so, but anyway, that creates that group where you can do that.
Yeah.
And the Fight Club 5, man, I just saw so many changes in our group and so many answered prayers and God just moving in guys' lives. It was awesome. And I hate not being there. But again, like I said, I felt convicted. I needed to be at my home church. I call it my home church, the church I was called to. New pastor, different Bible study going on Wednesday night, more change. But I felt like I need to be there to support that, you know. And I was always tossed between, okay, Fight Club or my church, Fight Club or my church. And I really felt like you got the good thing and the better thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes, so I'm just like, so I'm saying all that because I'm kind of confused, because now in between the Fight Club channel, I'm like, I don't have that tight community. I have a few friends, I can depend on and talk to and stuff. Right. But it's like, man, if that's not going on at our church, I need to go to that church. But the guy's like, no, because you have purpose at this church that I called you and placed you in,
Right.
So, anyway.
And I actually get that. There was a moment when I wanted to leave church, and God was like, nope, you're not. I'm not. No, you can't leave yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, look at you now, Chad. Right? You stuck it out. It's all
good. But, and so again, talking through all this and just thinking of things, thinking about community. Let's look at it from a worldly perspective. Gangs, not don't take this as me picking on them, but like the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
When you get the like-minded together, you feel included.
Right.
And if we don't get into a safe environment, and not just safe, a safe, godly environment, where we can be vulnerable, man, we're going to flounder.
Oh, yeah.
It's, again, we're going to lie to ourselves, and we're going to make up every excuse in the world to keep doing the sin that we love to do. And it's going to keep taking us further away than what we're supposed to be doing. And it's going to mess up all the relationships that we have with people. It's going to put up walls until we get to a point where I can come and say, hey, I've been having a hard time and I want to do this and I need to tell you so I don't.
Right. You're right. But in the meantime, you got to make the adjustments, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll have guys sometimes and I'm just like, quit coming to me with this over and over again, unless you're willing to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at some point it's like,
well, and
I may be being a little too harsh at some point, but it's like,
I mean, I've been in groups and I've been a repeat offender. But at the same time,
a repeat offender, I like that.
Getting guys to understand to put blocks in place.
Yeah.
Yes, it ultimately has to be a change of heart, but let's change our behavior until our heart catches up.
Right.
I told that to my wife one time. She was like, "What?" I was like,
"Yeah.
If you're gonna be a repeat offender, put a roadblock.
Yeah, do something.
Something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're probably gonna get around the roadblock, but it's a mental decision. Okay, I'm getting around this roadblock because I want to go do what I want to do.
Right.
And now I got to tell everybody that I went around the roadblock. And it's just one more step. I think it's one more step to help us like have that heart change later down the road of, okay, I'm doing this over and over again. I got to keep hitting these roadblocks.
Right.
What's got to change? Oh, my heart's got to change.
Your heart's
I got to want to not want to do these things anymore.
Well, one thing at some point you got to quit trying and start trusting, right?
Yeah.
If you try on your own, you're going to fail every time.
Yeah.
But you trust God, you trust his power, you trust his love, you trust the fact that I can yield to the Holy Spirit just as quickly and as easily as I yield to the temptation.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you yield and you surrender, you're giving up. It doesn't take any courage or strength. You're surrendering. All right, I'm going to surrender to the Holy Spirit instead of the temptation or the sin, So,
we're going through Mark as a church.
Yeah, and, I'm doing it with you, man.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm a little behind because I was sick and just life. And whenever I'm reading through something, it can take me 2 mornings before I write anything. Because I read it and I study it and then I go look at this and I go look at that. And so, but this morning I did my journal and it was the story of Jesus had just come back and he'd come off Mount Transfiguration. So it was him, Peter, James, and Peter, John, and James.
Right.
Getting into town, and they like literally walk up on this argument between the scribes and the disciples about this dad, his kid is thrown himself around and it's a demon possessed and all this stuff. And going through it and reading it, it was just the fact that it's that passage where the dad's like, I have unbelief, help my unbelief.
Yeah, right.
I want to believe and I want to trust. Well, man, just reading through that and getting to the point of, so when the demon came out, everybody thought the kid was dead. And Jesus just picked him up by the hand and it's like, hey, you're good. And in the belief and trusting from the dad that was going to be the thing, the ultimate need through that whole thing was the dad's faith.
Yeah, right.
Yes, there was a problem with the kid, but Jesus was addressing the fact that the father of the kid, like his faith wasn't there. Like he wasn't believing. He did have unbelief. And in my journal, getting to the point of my unbelief, my trust issue with God has been the same trust issue that I've had since I was a kid. I'm still dealing with the things from when I was a kid of I worry about money. Yeah. I worry about sex life. It's that. And just all these things, all these trust issues that I can trust God for my salvation and my eternity, but I don't want to trust him with the material things.
Yeah.
I don't want to trust him with relationships. I don't want to trust him with my finances. I can do it on my own.
Right.
I can handle this. And I can't.
Yep.
But getting to the point where when we hit that moment of trusting, we're dead because we've surrendered.
Yeah, right.
And we can't do it like we're afraid of dying.
Right.
And when we actually die, we're actually surrendering and trusting, and he's going to take care of it. He's going to take us by the hand and be like, I got you. Yeah. I got this. Why'd you wait so long to just surrender?
Right, yeah.
Because I got this. Why are we doing this? And the ultimate need is, I got to trust you. Mm-hmm. So I think it's interesting, funny, whatever you want to call it, that this conversation has swung all the way back to me sitting over there this morning and doing my journal of, I still have problems trusting God. And I wanted to say that because you said something earlier of, I'm not perfect. Right. I've been saying this since the episode probably 1. I'm not perfect. Just because I can sit here and God told me to put a camera on and talk to people and be curious and have conversations and read and study and all that stuff. I don't get it right all the time. Matter of fact, I probably get it wrong more than I get it right. But it, like you said, it's day to day. Right. And yesterday I blew it. Well, let's try and do better today. Yep. Kind of thing. Yep. And for me to realize, kind of like I think what you did at the point of he can use me. Right. Understanding the fact that I am who I am because he created me this way. Mm-hmm. He has given me traits and abilities and called me to do things because he can use me, and just accept it.
Absolutely. Right. And we're in a fallen world. That's the way it is. But we have the promised hope that he's building a mansion for us right now, man. Right. He's waiting to take us home. Yeah. And so, because a lot of times we think that we need to produce the growth, right? Yeah. But he provides it for us. Yeah. And there's times where I'm just like, okay, what's going on? What's happening? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, and I'm trying to produce, and he's like, I'm going to provide it. And then he just hits me with that, with the growth or with that feeling of the Spirit. And, and you're just like, okay, he's going to provide it when the time is right. And it's okay. I just got to trust him.
Well, that's even with the podcast of, man, when I finally surrendered, when I finally died to myself and did what he told me to do, in my mind, it was going to blow up. It's going to be this huge thing. And then I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do this and all this stuff. And it's really been tens of 20s of people, which is fine. Yeah. That means 10 to 20 people probably getting stirred a little bit. Right. And taking a step. And it's not about me. It's literally just obeying and doing what he told me to do. And man, now, to be honest, getting it to where I'm doing this in my house and having people over and just being curious now conversations, I love this. Yeah, it's cool. I absolutely love doing this now. Yeah. It's not as scary.
Yeah. That's what I said. You've really gotten more relaxed, confident over the years, man. You're just getting better and better. Yeah. And that's trusting God more, even though you don't realize you're doing it, but you are, man. Yeah. And so I've really enjoyed this, and I've enjoyed watching you grow over the different podcasts that have come out.
Oh yeah, because
it's been really good.
I leave all the old ones up, so I tell anybody that I do tell about the podcast, I tell them, okay, start at the most recent and work your way back until when you can't stand it anymore, just turn it off. Because I feel like these late since I kind of rolled into YouTube and the camera thing, I feel like these are where it's supposed to be. I think I finally landed on what God intention was in being curious about people. Right. Man,
I've listened to some solo runs, and I'm telling you, but the interviews and the stories, man, that they speak.
Well, and I think they speak so loud because we live in a world and a culture that's not curious about anybody. Yeah, anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. All it is you got to believe what I believe, or you're done. Mm-hmm. You're dead to me, and it's like, people just be curious about other people. Yeah. It's amazing what you can find out just being curious.
That's right. That's funny because after John Louviere's podcast, which I keep going, Louviere, but I do love him, Yeah. This day would get better if he was sitting right next to me. I guarantee it. But
well, if he was here, he'd be heckling us.
Yeah, but he's probably heckling. He's going to heckle us when he listens to it later on, I'm sure. But anyway, but he was talking about being curious, and so I was like, there's a guy at church that I've known for a long time, and we're having Wednesday night dinner. I'm like, I'm going to sit over there and talk to that guy because I hadn't really talked to him. I find out this dude used to be a missionary. He's on furlough with his family for like 2 years. And I'm like, I didn't know all this stuff. So I'm like, I got curious and took time to start asking him questions and listen to him and his wife and his son. And I'm just like, man, I got to take time to do this more often.
Yeah.
To be curious about people and just don't worry about what I got to say or not say, you know, just listen to them and get to know them, you know?
So I blame Roy at our church. Yeah. I blame Roy for my curiosity. Cause I had sessions with him, Fight Club, all that stuff.
Right.
In my dealings with me of feeling unloved or, trying to overcome what I think is rejection. I've come to understand I get filled up when I'm curious about you.
Yeah.
It's not from the worldly perspective. I want you to be curious about me.
Right.
So that I can feel important.
You're right.
It's a complete it's the upside down economy of God. That the more I'm curious about you, the more I feel filled up.
Right.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. When you die to self and live for others and think about others.
Right. That you just, like I said, I just feel so full doing this podcast. And like I said, where it's landed in just talking to people. And man, and I think that's what it is. Because I'll tell everybody, chit chat, small talk about the weather, I hate it. If we can't come in and say, man, tell me about what you went through as a kid.
Yeah.
I have a hard time having a conversation.
Right.
I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh yeah, today is nice.
Yeah. Right.
It's hot outside. Like,
yeah,
I'm just gonna go away.
Yeah, that's not real.
So I find it interesting, I guess, that because the way God built me in having these conversations, like I love it. Yeah. Absolutely love it. And I've learned that I have a high value of words, and the fact that you're giving me words, that I think that's what's filling me up.
That's cool, man.
So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
I don't know if you got anything else you want to share,
man.
From what I heard from a couple people, me and you could probably sit here and talk till 5-6 o'clock tonight.
We can keep on going because, like I said, there's so many facets of the way that God rescued me, restored me, redeemed me, and brought me to the place where I am right now. And I still struggle every day. Yesterday, I had one of the worst days of my life as far as mental, but I was thinking, cause I'm supposed to be doing that podcast tomorrow. That I felt like, nah, you're not winning. You're not winning. I'm going to believe the truth.
Yeah, it was a distraction.
Yeah, and so, but anyway.
So I'm gonna ask.
I lost track of what I was even saying. So, but yeah, man. But
the fact we could talk for
I could share some things with you. You said you got chills and make your head spin, and you'd be like, and you can't explain it any other than it was God.
Yeah.
Right? It was the God of the universe.
Yeah.
And you talked about it earlier. I mean, he intricately, right? He's the one that he wove our DNA together, right? And made us who we are and where we are right now.
Yeah.
And so there's no coincidences or accidents, man. But this has been awesome. So cool. It really has been. I've enjoyed it.
So I like you mentioned earlier that I asked John, what's the one thing you'd want to tell somebody about whatever? I really do try to ask every person that I have on is if there's one thing you'd want to like convey to someone that listened to the episode, what would it be?
All right, man, that's a deep question. Such short notice, but
sorry, I kind of throw people off sometimes.
Look, I lived a life for so many years thinking that God was angry at me and was pointing his finger at me, and when I messed up, he was laughing at me and pushing me away. That is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
We have a God who pursues us with a love relationship that's real and personal.
Yeah.
And that he wants to have that relationship with you each and every day. And so his love is amazing. It's so amazing that he gave his only son to die on your behalf, to pay the price and the penalty for your sin. I mean, that's love. That's the ultimate love. And if nothing else is going your way, Ross has said it before, is Jesus enough? Is he going to be enough? Absolutely he is, right? So just keep your focus and your eyes upon Jesus, right? And the things of the earth will grow strangely dim. That's an old hymn. You guys don't sing those anymore. But yeah, God is love and he loves you.
Yeah.
And all the things that are happening in your life are in order to draw you closer to him, not push you away.
Yeah.
And don't ever lose sight of that. And we lose sight of that a lot of times because we try to reason things and rationalize things, and we try to think of how God, we can't think of God, of exactly who he is and how he is and what he is. But we know that his word says he is love, and that goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives, right?
Yeah.
We know those promises are true. And so just trust those promises. Don't trust the lie. Listen to the voice, his voice.
Yeah.
Not the voices around you or inside you, right? His voice alone.
So I like listening to other podcasts and other guys. And there's a guy I listen to. I've been listening to him since one of the EXO conferences, which we're going to EXO in 2 weeks. Do you know what EXO is?
EXO?
EXO is a marriage conference that is put on by the EXO people.
Mm-hmm.
They had a couple of their people come down to our church once. Dave and Ashley Willis. They have a podcast.
Okay.
If you look up EXO marriage, it's done. It's cool.
Your church is sponsoring it, kind of, or is it?
No,
it's on the website.
Okay. They're out of Dallas.
All right.
They brag. I say brag. It's a good thing, but they're like the only. They tout that they are the only building in the United States that literally says a marriage something on their building.
Okay. Yeah.
That they want men to have great marriages and it can be done. We started going to the conference 2018, 2019. I think it's 2019. And we've been going every year.
Okay.
It's turned into we get away 2 times a year.
All right.
One for our anniversary, others EXO conference.
All right. I'm about to look into that, man.
Yeah. Look into it. So it was in Dallas the first year, and then they actually moved one of the conferences to Houston. So we're going to, so it's way easier to go to Houston.
All right. Yeah.
Well, this year they moved the Houston one until April. So if you want to go, there's probably some tickets still available for Houston, but we're going to Dallas. But anyway, one of the guys that was there, one of the times, Tim Ross, he was a preacher at a church up in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Mississippi City. And then God got him out of being a lead pastor, and now all he does is podcasts.
All right.
He puts out so much content. It's crazy how much he does.
Tim Ross?
Yeah.
Okay.
He got some good stuff. Anyway.
If I forget all
I
this stuff,
say all that.
You'll have to text it to me later. But go ahead.
I say all that to say, I was listening the other day.
This is what I love about the podcast, Chad. Come on.
He was talking about being a disciple.
Yeah.
Whoever he was talking to, whatever he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about being a disciple, how they went literally from feeding 5,000, got in a boat, and thought they were going to die.
Yeah, right. And we're seeing a ghost.
Yeah. Well, I think that story was he was already in the boat.
Oh, the 5,000, the 4,000.
4,000. Or
one of those days.
Whatever
he walked out and the ghost was
one of the miracles.
We got it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
They see this amazing miracle.
You're having a hard time keeping your train of thought, and all I'm doing is distracting you. But go ahead.
It's all good. Whatever miracle it was something miraculous.
Absolutely.
Supernatural.
Right.
And they're in the boat. Jesus is sleeping. Storm comes up.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to die. And Jesus is like, they wake him up and he's like, calm down.
Yeah.
And he calms the storm. And the point he was really getting to is that storm was not I don't think it was necessarily sent by God, but how many times do we go through a storm in life and we're like, God, what are you're going to kill us. Why are you doing this?
Right.
And it's like, it's really not. It's really just a storm.
Mm-hmm.
Life is just rough.
Right. It's a fallen world around us.
Yeah. And
for the time being, anyway.
For the time being. I just went through that whole thing of saying the storms of life.
That's okay.
And I'm just completely forgot.
That's okay.
What I really wanted to say about the storms of life.
But we're talking about marriage, right?
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, it's something I had going on. My wife is going to Faith Walk.
Nice.
So 2 years after I've been praying and asking and kind of laid off, and she signed up, man, she's going. So I'm so excited. So she'll be going on the March Walk. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay. Now I'm
2 years.
Who encouraged you to go?
Who encouraged me to go? Wesley Hughes.
No.
Oh, my sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law,
okay.
man. I'm
Sorry,
my sister-in-law. Yeah. My wife's sister.
I forgot.
It was my wife's sister.
Okay.
Yeah. She was the one. And so anyway, and I'm proud of my wife. She lost about 70 pounds recently. Yep. She's feeling better, kind of getting off some of her medicine. And
cool.
So I think physically she's going to be ready to go. And so just be praying for Pam that the Spirit of God will awaken her heart. And things will go. She's gonna be watching this, so I probably shouldn't say too much. But anyway, I do love you, Pam. You know that. So. And I'm looking forward to her going to the walk.
Yeah.
And just encountering God.
Yeah.
In that way, because I know we all know it's going to take place.
It's a great tool in the tool belt.
Absolutely.
Growing closer to God.
Right. It's like Jack Buckner said, there's nothing special about Faith Walk. There's nothing special about Camp Pearl. I said, don't ever lose sight of that. God has his hand on that ministry, but it's God doing it. The minute we think we have something to do with it, he can take his hand off it just as fast as he placed it on there. But that's the tool that God has been using, and we've seen it change, life after life, walk after walk. Ministry. And it's been wonderful. It really has changed the dynamic of my family through my nephew DeMarcus and one of my other nephews, Taylor. God has used that ministry amazingly in my life, and at the right time, perfect time, just when I needed. So
I'm pretty sure my wife said I came back very different.
Yeah, been a long time ago.
I'm probably, I don't know. She might be like, well, yeah, I said that. I don't. No, on
my wife. I'll tell you what my wife said. She said, "I love that guy." Before we went to Faith Walk, but I really love that guy that came back. That's what she said.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but yeah, on my walk, but that's when it was back at Dry Creek instead of at Camp Pearl, and man, just I don't know how else to explain it other than I heard God whispering to me. Not audible voice, but I felt like God was whispering to me, but the whisper was like so freaking loud that it was like deafening, but it was still just like, hey, I need you to quit doing this. And it was just like, oh my gosh. Okay.
You're right. That's what I liken it to. I was praying that God would take a hammer to my heart. I didn't know he was going to take a wrecking ball and it just kept going bam, bam, bam throughout the whole weekend. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
But it felt so good after.
Yeah.
It was healing and it was wonderful. And it helped me view him in a different way than I ever had before. That's why I talked about that love. That's important to know that God is love. And every wrathful act was done to restore or to protect.
Yeah.
Or, or to help somebody, because he's holy, he has to, or he wouldn't be a good God, a good judge. But anyway, it's life changing. Go ahead.
No, and I agree. And like, it's crazy. One of the biggest deals to me was the lay leader who was from Memphis, didn't know the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a little button this big, literally a 1-inch button.
Right.
And it said, "You are loved." Dude, I still have that button.
Yeah.
But going there and I'll say this, there's like this secrecy of faith walk.
Yeah, no secrecy.
It's a bunch of guys that get together, they hear testimony, they talk about it.
It's awesome, right? You sit in small groups,
and you eat a ton of food,
right? Yeah,
that's the crux of it. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But man, just the things I was dealing with, and to know that there are other guys going back. I think this is why it's such a big deal to me. Is that moment in Faith Walk when I realized I am not alone, and people love me even in the messiest things that I've done. They still love me,
right? Because we have that common bond, Christ, right?
Yeah.
And salvation, and it also one thing that stood out to me too. I'm listening to some of these stories, and I'm thinking, I thought I had it bad. my life is pretty blessed compared to this, and you're like, whoa,
And honestly, on my walk, because we have table leaders, we have people to help guide conversation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
My table leader gave a talk, shared his testimony,
right,
and I was sitting there like, did you just like, did you just read my whole life and got up on stage and told it from your perspective?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like what? In one of the nights, I was like, I broke, and I consider Faith Walk one of the milestones in my progression.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a spiritual marker for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
And I went and found it. I was like, hey, I need to talk to you. We went and found a quiet place. And I think that was the first time in my life that I actually confessed everything that I had been doing to someone.
Wow.
And it was freeing.
Yeah, it was absolutely great. Well, man, I forgot the guy's last name, Jake. He was playing the drums and
yeah, Jake.
But he gave a talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got a story.
LeBeau.
Yeah, LeBeau. Yeah, you're right. And so in and out of jail, certain things. But so at the end, he plays that Zach Williams song where Zach Williams in the prison, right? And it's on the video, is after the song. And then, dude, I'm breaking. Like, I'm doing shoulders shrugging, whining like a dog, crying. Matt Warner's with table leader. He comes up behind me. He's just hugging me. I'm breaking. But I hadn't realized I had some unforgiveness for myself, right? My brother was in and out of jail most of his life, right? And I'm always bailing him out, helping him, paying his bills, doing those sort of things. He'd get straight for a while, then he's back on drugs. And so the last time we spoke, he was in jail again, and then he comes out with this phrase: "If you don't bail me out of jail, I'm gonna lose my job." I'm like, no, boy, you're losing your job because you're writing hot chicks all over town.
Yeah.
No, and so, and just something stirred in me, man, and I was just like, and he's like, "It's only like $100 or whatever I'm like, I don't care if it's $5, man. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's the last I heard of my brother. Like the next day we talked and he got sober. He would, he sobered up, and the next day, we talked, kind of patched things up, told him I loved him. He said that he loved me and everything. And, he apologized to me and all that stuff. But that was the last time I spoke with him. Right. And that was the last chance I had or opportunity to be Jesus to him. Right. And, I can't change all that. But I hadn't realized for 20 years, man, because he disappeared in 2001. That was September of 2001. And no one has heard or seen him ever since. That was the last conversation that I had with him. And so I knew, like, on my birthday, he never got in touch. He didn't get in touch with me. Didn't hear anything Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I told my wife, I said, something's wrong. She said, what do you mean? I said, it doesn't matter how far away my brother was, where he was, what he was doing. He would get in touch with me on my birthday, right? And so anyway, I'm getting into all that because that was a moment where I got freedom because I had unforgiveness for myself because the way I treated him. I didn't treat him with Christ's love, but God was more or less like, I forgave you for that a long time ago. Forgive yourself. And so that was a breakthrough, huge breakthrough moment for me. But what are the odds of Jake giving that, plays that video of the guy coming out, and it hit me at that moment. I haven't forgiven myself for the way I treated my brother. And so anyway, that was one of those cool moments. We were just talking about those moments at Faith Walk that where God was just like, man, forgive yourself. I forgave you of that. It's okay. It's a circumstance, situation. It wasn't your fault, it's just something you did. It happened, but and who knows, he might've disappeared after that anyway. If I bailed him out, who knows whatever, or might not have. I can't go there, but the thing was, man, it was just like, ooh, that was one of the wrecking ball moments I was talking about. So,
well,
I don't even know how long we've been talking, bro. So
we got a good hour and a half in.
Whoa.
So I'm actually going to call it because I think people are going to start rolling in that door right over there.
Right, that's fine.
But man, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I hope it helps someone. I mean, like I said, you gave me chills listening to some of your stuff.
That's all. That's, I thank you for that. But, to God be the glory, man. He is good. All right. So good.
Well, thanks again.
All right, brother. Thank you.
And I'll see everybody. Well, I won't see anybody. Y'all come check it out on the next episode. All right. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Hope Over Coffee podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast app. This includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube for the video version of this episode. Don't forget to connect with us on social media where we share inspirational content and updates for the upcoming episodes. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hope Over Coffee. Thanks again for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time over a cup of coffee.